The Glasgow Smile, also known as the Chelsea Smile, is a term that evokes confusion at first but is far from a symbol of joy. Originating in the violent streets of Glasgow, Scotland in the early 20th century, it represents one of the darkest and most terrifying punishments ever used in gang warfare. While smile might conjure images of happiness, this particular smile is a cruel reminder of suffering, humiliation, and power dynamics within the criminal world. Originating in the tough, lawless streets of Glasgow, the Glasgow Smile became infamous for its brutal nature. It was not just a form of punishment, but a statement, an undeniable assertion of control, fear, and dominance. This phenomenon became a tool for intimidation, one that left the victim with a permanent reminder of submission and terror. But the tale of the Glasgow Smile does not stop in Scotland. Over time, this horrifying act of violence spread across the globe, becoming synonymous with organized crime, terror, and the underworld. Understanding the full scope of this chilling phenomenon requires us to travel back to its roots, through the gritty, unforgiving streets of Glasgow. Here, the story of the Glasgow Smile began. In the early 20th century, Glasgow was a city caught between industrial growth and rampant poverty. The rapid expansion of factories and shipyards provided employment opportunities, but also led to severe overcrowding and a pervasive sense of disenfranchisement in working-class neighborhoods. Areas like Gorbals and Bridgeton became notorious for crime and gang activity, with sectarian violence between Protestant and Catholic communities further exacerbating tensions. At the heart of Glasgow's underworld was the sectarian violence between Catholic and Protestant gangs, most notably the Billy Boys. Led by William Fullerton, the Billy Boys began as a Protestant extremist group targeting Catholics, but quickly became known for their extreme violence and territorial control over Glasgow's streets. Their violent methods were soon adopted by rival gangs, escalating into a broader culture of violence where a gang's brutal reputation defined them. The Billy Boys were one of the first to use violence not only to punish, but to maintain their dominance over territory. Their influence extended beyond Glasgow and into other cities, helping to spread the methods and philosophies of gang violence throughout the UK. This sectarian conflict laid the groundwork for the brutal culture that would give birth to the Glasgow Smile. This form of disfigurement became not just a punishment, but a method of instilling fear into anyone who dared challenge the gang's authority. In this environment, the mafia method emerged as a weapon of fear and power. It was not a random act of violence, but a calculated punishment for betrayal, disrespect, or failure to adhere to the brutal rules of gang warfare. The disfigurement served as a permanent, grotesque reminder of the victim's submission to a gang's brutal authority, marking them as weak, a failure, or someone who had crossed the line. A disfigured face meant that a person would forever be marked as a victim, often cutting them off from society, leaving them stigmatized. Gangs employed this method not only to punish but also as a form of psychological warfare. The victims who wore the Glasgow Smile served as living examples of the strength and influence of their attackers. Their scars sent a clear message to anyone in the community. Crossing the wrong people would come at a steep price, one that would not fade over time. To understand the full impact of the Glasgow Smile, it's essential to examine the culture of violence that thrived in Glasgow during this time. The Industrial Revolution had brought prosperity to some but misery to many others. In the slums of Glasgow, people lived in overcrowded, filthy conditions, with little to no access to healthcare or education. The gap between the rich and the poor was vast, and for many, crime became the only way to survive. In such an environment, gangs flourished. These gangs often acted as informal law enforcement, meting out their own form of justice while protecting their territory. The Glasgow Smile became a tool for asserting dominance over rival gangs, safeguarding their territory and punishing those who strayed. It was a visual symbol of control in a city where law and order were a distant hope for many. Understanding the origins and evolution of the Glasgow Smile provides insight into the dark undercurrents of Glasgow's history and the extreme measures employed by gangs to maintain control and instill fear. The Glasgow Smile is one of the most brutal methods of disfigurement ever devised. The process itself is simple but horrific. A sharp object, such as a razor blade, was used to slice the corners of the victim's mouth, creating two deep cuts that resembled a smile. To further the suffering, the victim's head would often be pulled back, causing the skin to tear even further, resulting in a permanent, grotesque grin. The victim, while left alive, would carry the marks of this horrific act for the rest of their life. This was not merely a form of physical punishment. The true aim of the Glasgow Smile was psychological. The scars were a constant reminder of the victim's submission to a gang's brutal authority. The disfigurement was not just painful, it was humiliating. It marked the victim as weak, a failure, or someone who had crossed the line. What made the Glasgow Smile particularly terrifying was the fact that it could be inflicted at any time, without warning, and the victim would have to live with the scar for the rest of their life. The gangs used these permanent marks as powerful tools, utilizing their victims as walking advertisements of their power. The Glasgow Smile has left a lasting impact on popular culture, symbolizing extreme violence and psychological horror. Its most notable depiction is in the character of the Joker in various Batman narratives, where it underscores the character's madness and cruelty. The Joker's story and the grotesque grin that marks his character serve as a constant reminder of how violence can reshape a person's identity and their relationships with others. While the act itself has diminished with the decline of such gang activities, the Glasgow Smile remains a dark footnote in Glasgow's history. It's occasionally referenced in discussions about urban violence and gang culture and in artistic representations of horror and crime. The term has also found its way into broader cultural discussions, often used metaphorically to describe situations or actions that leave an indelible, painful mark, much like the physical scar it describes. Understanding the method and its implications highlights the enduring nature of certain methods of intimidation and control within organized crime, reflecting a dark aspect of human behavior that transcends borders and eras. Originating in the early 20th century in Glasgow, Scotland, the Glasgow Smile quickly spread to other cities where organized crime took root. By the mid-20th century, it had made its way to London, becoming known as the Chelsea Smile, particularly used by the infamous Kray Twins, Ronnie and Reggie Kray. The Krays were among the most notorious gangsters in London's East End during the 1950s and 60s. Their criminal empire included everything from protection rackets to armed robbery and even murder. Their power was built on fear, and the Chelsea Smile became one of their primary tools of terror. It was used to punish enemies, traitors, and anyone who dared to defy them. An associate of the Krays once said, "If you crossed them, you got the smile, and it stayed with you forever." The smile, with its grotesque, permanent reminder, became an iconic symbol of their reign over East London. The psychological harm it inflicted was significantly greater than the physical harm, leading to the social exclusion of those who wore the mark. As the Glasgow Smile's reputation grew, it began to spread across the Atlantic and into other parts of the world. While not as common in the American Mafia, there were stories of similar disfigurements being used in mob wars, particularly in Chicago and New York. In these fierce turf battles, criminal organizations sometimes employed methods of disfigurement as a way to send a message. In modern times, the legacy of the Glasgow Smile can be seen in criminal organizations around the world. Latin American cartels, notorious for their brutality, adopted similar tactics of disfigurement to control populations, punish informants, and terrorize rivals. This method of punishment, though not identical to the original Glasgow Smile, served the same purpose: to instill fear and maintain dominance. Understanding the spread and evolution of the Glasgow Smile highlights the enduring nature of certain methods of intimidation and control within organized crime, reflecting a dark aspect of human behavior that transcends borders. The Glasgow Smile, a term that evokes both intrigue and horror, has been more than just an urban legend. It has been a real and terrifying punishment that has left countless victims scarred for life. These individuals have endured not only the physical pain, but also the profound psychological trauma associated with living as a permanent symbol of defeat. One of the most well-known survivors of a Glasgow Smile is James Whitey Miller, a small-time drug dealer in Glasgow during the 1980s. Miller found himself in debt to a local gang, and as punishment, he was abducted and taken to an abandoned building. There, he was subjected to the Glasgow Smile. Though he survived the attack, the scars were a constant reminder of the brutality he endured. Miller later spoke about the psychological effects of the attack, saying, "They didn't just mark my face, they marked my soul." This statement highlights the deeper, often more lasting damage that the Glasgow Smile caused, far beyond just the physical disfigurement. The Kray Twins' reign of terror was marked by numerous instances where victims were disfigured, often with the Chelsea Smile. While many of these stories remain unverified, the lasting fear the Krays instilled in London is undeniable. The sight of someone with the scars of the Krays was a clear warning to anyone who might cross them. The Glasgow Smile has not been confined to the UK. In 2008, a teenage girl in London fell victim to this torture after a brutal assault by a gang. The traumatizing incident left her permanently disfigured and struggling to cope with the aftermath. Additionally, the notorious serial killer Albert Fish was known to have carved a Glasgow smile into one of his victims, Billy Gaffney. This case underscores the extreme and horrifying nature of the Glasgow Smile as a method of torture and intimidation. The Glasgow Smile, a term that evokes both intrigue and horror, has permeated popular culture, symbolizing brutality, rebellion, and villainy. Its chilling nature has inspired various forms of media, from films and television series to literature and art. One of the most notable portrayals of the Glasgow Smile is in the 2008 film The Dark Knight, where Heath Ledger's Joker character sports a grotesque grin inspired by the Glasgow Smile. The Joker's terrifying backstory, in which he describes how he got his scars, made the Glasgow Smile a symbol of chaos, terror, and madness. In the British TV series Peaky Blinders, the Glasgow Smile is featured, connecting it to the brutal gang violence of post-World War I Britain. This historical drama brought renewed attention to the criminal world of early 20th century England and the ruthless methods used by gangs to maintain power. Other films like Green Street Hooligans and The Football Factory have used the Glasgow Smile to highlight the brutal world of football hooligans and gang culture. These portrayals emphasize the violent subcultures and the extreme measures taken to assert dominance and instill fear. In literature and visual art, the Glasgow Smile often serves as a metaphor for survival against cruelty and oppression. The scars left behind by the Glasgow Smile represent more than just physical violence. They symbolize the emotional and psychological scars of enduring unthinkable brutality. Writers and artists have used the image of the Glasgow Smile to explore themes of suffering, defiance, and the human capacity for cruelty. The Glasgow Smile remains one of the most gruesome and chilling punishments in the criminal world. From its origins in the ganglands of Glasgow to its spread across the globe, it has become a symbol of brutality, control, and fear. While its physical use may have diminished over time, the psychological and cultural impact of the Glasgow Smile endures, reminding us of the darkest aspects of human nature. Understanding the history and implications of such acts is essential in fostering awareness and promoting safety within communities. If this deep dive into the history and impact of the Glasgow Smile fascinated you, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories from the underworld. What other criminal practices or historical topics would you like us to explore? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, but most importantly, stay safe.